Have you ever wondered how the same pesticides that protect our crops can also harm our environment? This question introduces us to a conundrum known as the pesticide paradox. In the world of agriculture, pesticides play a crucial role. They're like the unsung heroes of our food production system, tirelessly waging war against pests and diseases that threaten our crops. From the sprawling wheat fields to the humble backyard vegetable gardens, pesticides are hard at work ensuring that our plants grow healthy and strong. But here's where the paradox comes in. These very same substances, designed to protect our food sources, can potentially harm our environment. Picture this. A farmer sprays pesticides on a field of corn. The chemicals do their job, eliminating the pests. But what happens once the job is done? Do they simply vanish? Job well done? Regrettably, the answer is no. These chemicals can linger in the environment, seeping into our soil, contaminating our waterways, and even making their way into the food chain. This is the essence of the pesticide paradox. Their role as protectors of our crops is indisputable, but at what cost to our environment? Just as a coin has two sides, so does the use of pesticides. On one side, they help to ensure food security by protecting crops from pests and diseases. On the other side, they pose a potential risk to our environment and, by extension, to us. That's right, the very chemicals designed to protect our food can also end up in our bodies, with unknown long-term effects. So, we're faced with a dilemma. Do we continue to use these chemicals, knowing the potential harm they could cause? Or do we seek alternatives, knowing that without pesticides, our crops could be at risk? Indeed, the pesticide paradox is a complex issue, but understanding its impacts is the first step towards finding a solution. As we delve deeper into this topic, let's keep in mind that every action has a reaction, and in the case of pesticides, the reaction can be far-reaching and profound. So, how exactly do pesticides impact our environment? Let's dive right in. Pesticides, while often used with the aim of protecting crops from harmful pests, have a ripple effect that extends beyond their intended targets. One of the primary aspects of the environment affected by pesticides is soil health. These chemicals can harm beneficial soil microorganisms and disrupt the natural balance of the soil ecosystem. Over time, this can lead to decreased soil fertility and productivity. Water quality is another critical area impacted by pesticide use. When it rains, pesticides can run off from fields and enter our waterways. This runoff has the potential to contaminate our rivers and lakes, leading to water pollution. This not only affects the quality of the water we drink, but can also harm aquatic life. Fish and other water-dwelling creatures can ingest these pollutants, causing harm and even death in extreme cases. This brings us to another important point: the effect of pesticides on non-target organisms. Pesticides are not discerning. They can harm or kill beneficial insects and other organisms that are not their intended targets. These collateral losses can disrupt ecosystems and negatively impact biodiversity. Speaking of biodiversity, the widespread use of pesticides can lead to a decline in the variety of life in a given area. This is because these chemicals can create an environment that is inhospitable to certain species, causing them to either die off or move to a different location. This reduction in biodiversity can upset the balance of ecosystems and have far-reaching impacts on the environment. To sum it up, the environmental impact of pesticides is not limited to just their intended targets. They affect soil health, water quality, non-target organisms, and biodiversity. The ripple effect of their use can be seen in the health of our ecosystems and the quality of our natural resources. Clearly, the environmental footprint of pesticides is vast and varied, affecting not just the land, but also the water and the many organisms that inhabit these spaces. But the story doesn't end there. Have you heard about pesticide resistance and bioaccumulation? Let's dive a little deeper into this. Pesticide resistance is a fascinating yet alarming phenomenon. It's like an arms race in nature. When we use pesticides, we're trying to kill off pests, right? But what if I told you that pests aren't just sitting ducks? They're evolving, adapting, and building resilience against these chemical weapons. Picture this. When a population of pests is exposed to a pesticide, most of them will die, but a few with natural resistance may survive. These hardy survivors reproduce, and their offspring inherit that resistance. Over time, and with repeated exposure, the entire pest population may become immune to the pesticide. This is pesticide resistance, a classic example of survival of the fittest in action. But wait, there's more. Let's talk about bioaccumulation. This is another side effect of pesticide use that's often overlooked. When we spray pesticides, they don't just disappear. Many linger in the environment, in the air, water, and soil. And these pesticides can be absorbed by small organisms and start accumulating in their bodies over time. As these small organisms get eaten by larger ones, the pesticides move up the food chain, increasing in concentration with each step. By the time they reach top predators, or even us humans, these pesticide levels can be significantly higher than in the environment, potentially leading to harmful effects. This is bioaccumulation, a silent but potent threat. Interestingly, both these phenomena, pesticide resistance and bioaccumulation, are interconnected. As pests become more resistant, we tend to use more pesticides, which can lead to more bioaccumulation. It's a vicious cycle, a complex web of cause and effect. Both pesticide resistance and bioaccumulation add another layer of complexity to the issue of pesticide use. This is not just about killing pests anymore. It's about understanding and managing the broader ecological implications of our actions. Now that we understand the problem, what can we do to mitigate the impacts of pesticides? As we grapple with the pesticide paradox, several strategies emerge that could help us strike a balance between pest control and environmental conservation. One of these solutions is integrated pest management, or IPM. This approach emphasizes the growth of a healthy crop with the least possible disruption to agro-ecosystems. It encourages natural pest control mechanisms, only resorting to chemical pesticides as a last resort. By reducing dependency on chemicals, IPM can significantly cut down the environmental footprint of agriculture. Another promising strategy is organic farming, a holistic production management system that promotes and enhances biodiversity, biological cycles, and soil biological activity. It's based on minimal use of off-farm inputs and management practices that restore, maintain, and enhance ecological harmony. Organic farming shuns synthetic pesticides and fertilizers, opting instead for organic compost, green manure, and biological pest control. This not only reduces pollution and soil degradation, but also enhances soil fertility and biodiversity. Last but not least, let's talk about biopesticides. These are derived from natural materials such as animals, plants, bacteria, and certain minerals. Biopesticides tend to be less harmful than conventional pesticides. They often target specific pests, reducing the risk of harming beneficial insects or causing unintended environmental damage. Plus, pests are less likely to develop resistance to biopesticides, making them a sustainable option for long-term pest management. But mitigating the impacts of pesticides isn't just about finding alternatives. It's also about using pesticides more responsibly. This includes proper storage and disposal of pesticides, following label instructions, and using the right amount at the right time. Education and awareness are key to promoting responsible pesticide use. By adopting these methods, we can begin to address the pesticide paradox and move towards a more sustainable future. As we navigate this journey, let's remember that every step we take towards reducing the impacts of pesticides is a step towards preserving our planet for future generations. Because in the end, it's not just about growing crops. It's about growing a healthier, more sustainable world. In conclusion, the relationship between pesticides and the environment is a complex one. We've delved into the pesticide paradox, the environmental impacts of pesticides, the issues of pesticide resistance and bioaccumulation, and the strategies to mitigate these impacts. Let's briefly revisit these key points. The pesticide paradox is a catch-22 situation where we're using pesticides to protect our crops and increase our food supply. But in the process, we're causing harm to the environment and non-target species. Pesticides can contaminate soil, water, turf, and other vegetation, leading to a ripple effect that impacts entire ecosystems. The environmental impacts of pesticides are far-reaching. They can pollute the water we drink and the air we breathe. They can harm non-target organisms, and they can disrupt ecosystems. Pesticides can harm birds, fish, beneficial insects, and other wildlife. and can even have deleterious effects on human health. Pesticide resistance and bioaccumulation present another set of challenges. Over time, pests can develop resistance to pesticides, rendering them ineffective. This leads to an ever-increasing cycle of pesticide use. Bioaccumulation refers to the buildup of pesticides in the bodies of organisms over time, which can lead to harmful effects up the food chain. However, all is not doom and gloom. There are strategies we can employ to mitigate the impacts of pesticides. These include integrated pest management, organic farming methods, and the use of biopesticides, among others. We can also advocate for stricter regulations on pesticide use and support research into safer alternatives. So what's the takeaway here? The situation is complex, but not insurmountable. We each have a role to play in creating a more sustainable future. It might be as simple as choosing organic produce at the supermarket, or as involved as lobbying for stricter pesticide regulations. But every action counts. As we strive for a more sustainable future, it's important for each of us to understand these issues and take action in our own ways. Together, we can make a difference.